Hello everyone. Thank you all for watching the video. Wishing you all good health and peace. The dawn slipped quietly over the mountains, its light filtering through a shroud of mist that hugged the hills like a lover reluctant to part. Lytuca stirred, her breath a faint wisp in the chill, as roosters crowed, their voices sharp against the hush of morning. She rose, her bare feet brushing the cool earth of their bamboo house, and knelt by the hearth. Her hands etched with the labor of years, fed twigs to the fire, coaxing flames that flickered like fragile dreams. A pot of rice porridge simmered, its steam rising in soft curls, a humble offering for her daughter Han, who slept in the corner, curled beneath a quilt patched with care. Tien, her husband, had vanished into the fog before first light, his steps swallowed by the grove where their oranges hung heavy, turning gold under the weight of autumn. The day stretched ahead, woven from toil and hope, yet Lytuca's heart carried a quiet unease, like a stone rippling a still pond. Their home clung to the hillside, its bamboo walls weathered by rain and time, a fragile shelter against the mountain's whims. Each morning Lytuca gathered eggs from their coop or bundled greens for the market, her feet tracing paths worn deep by countless journeys. Tien labored beside her, his hoe breaking earth for their garden, where they sowed seeds of cabbage and beans, each sprout a whisper of a better season. Han, barely 3, trailed them, her small hands tossing scraps to the geese, her laughter a spark that lit the grind of survival. Lytuca watched her, a smile softening her lips, but her eyes held shadows, memories of winters when hunger gnawed, of nights when Han's cries echoed in a house too empty, of Tien's absence when prison bars held him far from her reach. Those years had forged her, a blade tempered by fire, yet the scars remained, tender beneath her calloused skin. That morning the air was sharp, the orange grove aglow with fruit ripening under a pale sun. Lytuca moved slowly, her hands sorting eggs, their shells smooth against her palms. Han played nearby, chasing a goose across the yard, her giggles weaving through the cluck of chickens. Tien returned, his shirt damp with dew, a bundle of banana leaves slung over his shoulder. He set it down, his gaze settling on Lytuca, heavy with something unspoken. They sat for breakfast, the porridge warm in their bowls, Han's chatter a bright thread in the quiet. Lytuca peeled an egg for her daughter, her fingers steady, but her mind drifted, sensing a shift in the air, like clouds gathering before rain. Tien broke the silence, his voice low, deliberate, as if testing the weight of his words. "Tuca," he said, his eyes fixed on the fire's glow. "The mountain's not enough anymore. The grove, the eggs, the garden, it keeps us alive, but Han deserves more. I'm going down to the valley. I'll find work, something steady, to buy her clothes, medicine to make Tet brighter. For her, for you." Lytuca's breath caught, her spoon pausing midair. She looked at him, seeing the man who'd returned to her, his hands rough but gentle, his heart scarred but resolute. She saw, too, the man who'd once left her to carry their world alone, when trust had crumbled like dry earth underfoot. The mountain was home, its streams, its trails, its stubborn soil, but it was also a tether, its limits tightening with each passing year. Tien's words were a truth she'd felt but hadn't named, yet they stirred a quiet fear. The valley was unknown, a place of promise and peril, and she wondered what it would ask of him, of them. "You're sure?" she asked, her voice soft, her fingers tightening around the bowl's edge. "I'm the man of this house," he said, his jaw set, though his eyes betrayed a flicker of doubt. "I'll go find something to lift us. Han needs it. You'll see." She nodded, her throat tight, a knot of hope and dread twisting within. "Eat well then," she murmured. "Keep your strength. Han and I will hold things here." Han climbed into her lap, her small hands reaching for the egg, her giggle a fleeting balm. Lytuca peeled it, her touch gentle, her thoughts far away. She saw Tien's resolve, but also his burden, hidden in the way his shoulders hunched, as if carrying a load heavier than any basket. She felt her own, a weave of faith in his promise, fear of what he'd meet, and a stubborn will to guard their home. The mountain had cradled them, but it couldn't stretch to meet their dreams. Tien's choice was a step into the dark, a seed cast on untested ground. He prepared to leave, packing a small sack with rice, a shirt, a few coins earned from eggs. Lytuca watched, her hands folding Han's quilt, her heart a tangle of prayers. Han toddled to Tien, her arms outstretched, her voice bright. "Papa, bring me a gift?" she chirped, and he knelt, kissing her forehead, his smile strained but warm. Lytuca stood at the door, Han in her arms, as Asin stepped onto the path. "Be careful," she called, her voice carrying over the wind. He turned, his nod a silent vow, then vanished around the bend, the mountain swallowing his form. The path to the valley was steep, slick with moss, winding past streams that murmured secrets, past fields where buffalo grazed under a sky heavy with clouds. Asin walked, his steps steady but his mind restless. He thought of Han's laughter, of Lytuca's quiet strength, of the grove they tended together. He thought, too, of his past, mistakes that had cost them years, trust he'd fought to rebuild. This journey was his chance to prove himself, to carve a future less fragile than the one they clung to. But the valley was a world apart, its pulse faster, its dangers sharper, and he felt the weight of it pressing against his chest. Trouble found him before opportunity did. On a dusty road, chaos erupted, two men sprinting, their faces taut with fear, pursued by shouts and the thud of boots. Asin froze, then acted, tackling one as he lunged past, the man's fist grazing his ribs. The police swarmed, cuffs snapping shut, their thanks curt but grateful. Asin stood, his breath uneven, a bruise blooming under his shirt. The encounter left a mark, not just on his skin, but in his mind, a reminder that the valley held teeth beneath its promise. He brushed it off, but the ache lingered, a quiet warning. He pressed on, his sack heavier with each step. At a roadside stall he met an old friend, Tien, whose face creased with years and laughter. They shared water, the talk turning to life, to work. "Leaving the mountain?" Tien asked, his eyes narrowing. "There's building work here, hard but it pays. Or sell that grove of yours. City folk pay well for oranges like those." Asin hesitated, the grove a piece of home he hadn't meant to part with. It was Lytuca's pride, their shared labor, each tree a memory of seasons endured together. But Tien pressed, his voice warm, persuasive. They walked to a buyer's shop, the air thick with citrus and haggling. The man, broad and shrewd, inspected a sample orange, large, sweet, its peel unblemished. 15 million dong, he offered. 5 million now, the rest when papers are signed. Asin's mind raced. The money could buy medicine for Han's fevers, a new roof for their house, books for her future. It could mean nights when Lytuca didn't wake to a leaking roof, days when hunger didn't lurk at their door. But selling the grove was a cut deep, a surrender of the life they'd built, a step toward a valley that might not welcome them. He thought of Lytuca's hands stained with soil tending those trees. He thought of Han running beneath their shade. Yet he saw too the weight of their need, the dreams too big for the mountain's arms. He shook hands, the deal struck, the weight of it settling like dust in his lungs. Tien clapped his shoulder, grinning. "Work's plenty here," he said. "Construction sites need strong backs. Try it. Better than breaking your hands on rocks up there." Asin nodded, his thoughts a whirl. He'd come for work, not to sell their roots, but the money was a lifeline, a chance to build something new. He pocketed the deposit, promising to return with papers, and set out again, the valley's hum both a lure and a warning. Back on the mountain, Lytuca carried the day's rhythm. She gathered eggs, her hands steady despite a dull ache in her bones. Han trailed her, tossing leaves to the chickens, her chatter a shield against the quiet. The fire burned low, its smoke curling like a sigh. Lytuca thought of Asin, his steps on the valley road, his promise to return with hope. She wondered what he'd find, work to lift them or trouble to drag them down. She wondered too about herself. Could she hold their life together, as she always had, or would this change shift the ground beneath her? She moved through the afternoon, watering the garden, her shadow long against the earth. Han napped, her small form sprawled on a mat, her breath soft. Lytuca paused, her hands resting on the hoe, her gaze drifting to the grove. The oranges glowed, their weight a quiet pride, but she felt a pang, as if sensing a loss she couldn't name. She thought of Asin's eyes that morning, steady but shadowed, and of Han, whose future hung on choices they made now. Her heart held a fragile balance, faith in his journey, fear of its cost, and a resolve to guard their home, no matter what came. Dusk settled, the sky bruising purple, a crescent moon rising over the hills. Lytuca sat by the garden, Han asleep in her lap, the earth cool beneath her. The orange trees stood silent, their fruit a faint gleam in the twilight. She thought of the grove, of a sin carrying their hopes into the valleys unknown. She thought of the years they'd endured, hunger, loss, redemption, and of the years ahead uncharted, waiting to be shaped. Her hands, steady that morning, trembled now, tracing Han's quilt. It stitches a map of their survival. Night fell, the fire's glow spilling across the room, touching the bamboo walls, the empty bowl, the door Sin would walk through again. When she couldn't know. Han stirred, her hand reaching for lytuca's, her warmth a tether to the present. Lytuca tucked her closer, her eyes catching the moonlight. Tomorrow she'd rise, gather eggs, walk the market trail, her steps sure despite the wait. Han would laugh, the chickens would cluck, and life would unfold, patient as the stream winding below. But in her soul a question lingered, delicate as starlight. Would a Sin's journey bring the future they dreamed of? Or would it carve a path they couldn't follow? She thought of Han, her daughter's life a seed yet to bloom, and of a Sin, his strength tempered by scars, his heart set on proving himself. For them she'd carry on, but what would that carrying cost? She thought of the grove, its oranges soon to belong to another, and of the mountain, which had held them but could no longer contain their dreams. She stepped outside, the night cool, the stars sharp against the dark. The mountain loomed, its silence vast, the valley hidden beyond its folds. Lytuca gazed down the path the Sin had taken, then up at the sky where the moon watched, quiet and knowing. She stood, letting the stillness hold her, a breath before dawn's demands. The wind stirred, carrying the scent of oranges, a reminder of what was and what might yet be.